We never make a point. Oh, hi, we're live. Okay.
We are live.
Hello, Doug.
Good to see you again, John. Hope your
Likewise,
summer's
it's
gone
been a
well.
little too much of a hiatus, it seems.
Yeah.
Summer's been interesting, yeah. It's been actually really nice here in Chicago for the most part. It's a gorgeous day today, fall day.
Good.
And I did get up to New England briefly.
Good.
And so, but I'm happy to be back, actually. I mean, interestingly, you know.
Good. Yeah. We have a
No,
hello from Germany also, I should say, from
oh, wow,
Xiaomao.
okay.
So thank you.
Thank you for being here. While we're at it, I always forget to say this, but hit the like button. If you like this show,
only on
like
YouTube.
Button.
I mean,
Yeah, if you're on YouTube, right? But
yeah.
For those on YouTube, either live or in the recorded version, hit the like button.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You hit the bell, the like button, get all the things.
Yeah. So we were going to talk today about meditation.
Yeah, that's a big topic.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I have to admit, I was inspired because I heard a talk by somebody. It was a recorded talk by a teacher at, I think, the Village Zendo in New York. It was really a funny talk about his experiences in meditation and how he just wasn't satisfied. He's been meditating for years and he's just like never hit the magic button or whatever. And he discovered a website or an organization. I think it's called Jhana or something like that. And they have these retreats to teach people how to go into jhana states. And the description of it was quite interesting, and he found it actually a useful retreat. It was very, very different, and I know we've talked about jhana a bit on this podcast, what it is, and how important is it, and all of that stuff. And I have never personally been on a jhana retreat, so I can't speak from personal experience. Only what I've read and even knowing that, in a sense, the first level of jhana is a samadhi state, and that's achievable. But I think more important is like techniques and methods and this and that, and different traditions do different things, or is it all basically the same thing? And Mahamudra and Dzogchen and Shikantaza and all these
terms,
words, terms and
confusing.
Anapanasati and Satipatthana and like and then and transcendental meditation, and all which is not a whole different thing, but it's just. So what do we do? How do we keep from being confused? And when one isn't working, do we use something else? And what does it mean if it's working? What does that even mean?
Right.
Yeah. So there's a lot here. So what's your experience?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of what you're touching on is something that I went through when I started out in meditation myself. Just sort of feeling my way forward. I started really out with Zen meditation, which I really enjoyed, Soto Zen, that is, which is just sit. You just sit, and usually the Zen instructor will give you the instruction to follow your breath, which is the most standard kind of instruction you can get.
Whatever that means, following your breath. Where am I following it to?
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, counting it, and then you start by counting it and not stopping, and so you get screwed up by that. But anyway, I mean, there are so many different approaches, and you can get confused. And I think a lot of the confusion that I felt starting out was a lot of hearing a lot of different instructions for what to do in meditation, and sort of do you do them all? I mean, which one do you choose, and
Right.
when and why and how and what does it matter? Um, and it helped me, I think, to get a sort of a framing around it, by understanding, or at least beginning to understand, when I read the early suttas and hear them discussed by people who are familiar with them, like Bhikkhu Bodhi and so on. Um, that that there are points to meditation. There are things you're trying to do, in the broader scheme, in the longer aim. So you're trying to observe the mind. You're trying to understand the mind. You're trying to understand uh, the causal influences upon you and how they interact, and when they are, or at least when they appear to be, beneficial and helpful to you or me, and when they appear not to be beneficial and helpful. And that's kind of a very just beginning of an understanding of, okay, so here's where we want to start. Um, so now I begin to understand what it is that we're doing when we're trying to follow the breath. Well, that's trying to calm ourselves down so that we can see more clearly. And of course, following the breath itself is useful because it gives you some insight into what's going on in the body, and how stressed we are at that moment, or what the breath is like at that moment. Um, I think that, at least that for me, that was useful to begin to understand, to begin to get a handle on the point of what we're after here. And then we can
Yeah.
sort of fit in other kinds of meditation, such as the Brahma Viharas, the loving kindness and compassion, so on. Um, we can fit those in when we feel, oh, there's a reason to do that now, for whatever. It depends on the state of mind of myself at that point, or in my life at that point. So at that point, and that sort of framing helps to say, yeah, there are these different kinds of approaches to meditation. They're not in conflict with one another. They're just trying to do slightly different things depending on what you need. You know,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I think that at least that helped me to sort of get a sort of a handle on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I, my first instruction was years ago in transcendental meditation, like when I was 20. And I found it barely instruction, you know, just repeat this mantra,
Mm,
right? Which you weren't supposed to tell anybody what the mantra was. And, and of course, you didn't know what the mantra meant, even, if
mm,
you weren't attuned to that. And I did that for a number of years and found it a little helpful just in terms of concentration, but not particularly. Usually I just had a headache. And, and then, I sort of let it go for a while. Um, and, and then started reading Thich Nhat Hanh and doing the practices that he suggested. And, the very first retreat I went on, extended retreat, was actually a loving kindness retreat, not knowing what loving kindness meditation even was. It was just like thrown at you and said, just repeat these phrases, which I did diligently for 8 days, and found it actually really helpful, really quite. I was in hindsight, I'm really happy that was my first retreat. But even then, I was sort of looking for something,
mm,
you know. And I think the beauty of say just sitting is that you're not looking for anything.
mm.
Although most people go into meditation looking for something, they want an experience, right? It was
Yeah.
until I learned that wasn't the point.
Mm. That's a
The
good point. Yeah.
experience was
Yeah.
not the point.
Hmm.
And that took a long time for me to get past that.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, and when I started teaching, and I think the first things I taught were just in little sitting groups, right, and just usually, directing people to the breath because that was the easiest thing to do, right? And that's what most people are familiar with. And, but then you start hearing, oh, well, I can't stay on the breath, I just can't stay with the breath. I just, whatever. And, people would get all like frustrated because they couldn't do that because that's what they thought they had to do, right? Because there's always something, missing. It's like, yeah, so when the mind leaves the breath, you just come back. Oh, well, but it keeps happening. Yes. Yeah. And it does. And that's okay,
Yep.
and people were fighting that. And then at some point there's that realization, oh, okay, that it doesn't matter. It's fine. The
Yeah.
mind, does this and we just kind of relax around it. And the breath is always there. And, so I would, I was reading various things. And then when I started teaching MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, which has Jon Kabat-Zinn has set it up in a very clear way. And he has wisdom, there's wisdom behind his choices as to starting with the body scan. Because so often in practice, in Buddhist practices, depending on the tradition, the body isn't quite talked about in the same way as the body scan is taught in MBSR, which is quite deliberately going through very specific places in the body and just learning to sort of reconnect with this body. And so, that practice is taught. And then there's an awareness of breath practice, or what's now called focused attention practice, because we're getting trauma sensitivity here. And for some people, the breath is a problem for various reasons, So the breath isn't the only option, but the focused attention, and then, more open awareness, and then loving kindness practices, so these are all unfolded. And then at the end of the 8 weeks, people say, well, what should I do? Because, these have been introduced as separate practices. And they can be practiced as separate practices. But in many ways, for me anyway, loving kindness is not separate from any of the other practices that it doesn't have to be. It doesn't, the phrases are not an essential part of loving kindness practice. It's more just an opening up in a way and a turning toward in a way and just kind of trusting the process. And then, those moments, and then, when, getting really in depth in the Satipatthana practices, right, which are vast, right? So you start with awareness of breath, and then you go to awareness of basically situational awareness of the body. And then, there is a kind of body scan. There's a very clear body scan on, specific parts of the body. I forget the 32. What is it called?
Well, that's the sort of the ugly parts of the body. It's intended to stop you from clinging to the body because it's focusing on internal organs and stuff. So yeah, I mean it's a different, slightly different point than the body scan, but yeah, similar.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, it just gets very detailed and it's about detachment and from the body, and then there's corpse meditation and
meditation on death, and decay,
and the elements, right? So the elements. So these are all part of the first foundation, right? And then we get into mindfulness of feeling tones, like, so what's that, and then mindfulness of mind, or what's that, and then mindfulness of the dharmas. I mean, my God, it's like all these kind of practices. It's like, what do I do, And then, like, after that, I really got into the Anapanasati Sutta, which is just a kind of distillation in many ways of the Satipatthana Sutta, with
focus on the breathing in particular.
Yes, and everything else. But the breath is, once we realize that, there's the one thing that keeps us present is this body, is this breath. Because otherwise, we'd be dead. So it's like, here's the body, here's the breath. This is always here. This is always here, available, always. And once, as you said, once you realize that, okay, I want to establish a certain level of shamatha, tranquility, so that I can then, with more or with less effort, in a way, start to investigate these other phenomena, right? These other aspects of the mind, whether it's feeling tone, whether it's mind itself, or whether it's the various aspects of the senses and all that arises in that last foundation of mindfulness, which is really the investigative part of our practice. But as you said, and this is again where to me where the Eightfold Path is so important, having the right view and the right intention at the very beginning, like why am I doing this? What's really behind this? But it's like I will often say, in an MBSR class, it's not about becoming a better meditator, right?
Right.
That may happen, whatever that means. Right? It's just about becoming a better person.
Yeah.
And becoming a better, a clear understanding of interdependence and dependent origination and cause and effect and karma and all of that. Like, how do we really kind of hold that? And if the mind is settled to the point where we can actually investigate, like, what's really happening now, that changes things around. And I think, and now, when I do our morning meditation and I ring the bell, and I'll say to the group, the bell is just a reminder of your intention. And because without that, we can be lost. And,
yeah, you can use that. You can use, I think, also small sounds that distracting events during meditation to be a reminder of the intention of the, brings you back. In a certain sense, then, distractions become helpful, because when you try to say, okay, when I get distracted, that's wait, where am I right now? And usually you're not where you should be. You're off somewhere thinking about something. It's, let's bring it back. I remember hearing, I've forgotten who it was, but I've heard it a couple times where people say, the point of, we follow the breath, but the point of following the breath is not to become better breathers. I mean, we're not trying to become really good at breathing, right? I mean, and it's a sort of a similar kind of thing. We're not trying to become better meditators, whatever that means. I mean, what even would it mean to be? I mean, look, there are some elements of experience in meditation that are important, in particular if you're doing jhana, I think. Jhana is a particular focused a technique to get you a certain kind of awareness of a kind of experience, a kind of a feeling, a kind of a I don't know how to describe it, but a sort of a sense that's very pleasant at the beginning, and then as it goes along, the pleasantness becomes something else. But I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's really, really important to keep in mind that the point of meditation is not the experience. And I think that's something that a lot of people start with, and I certainly started with, is a feeling that, everyone says that meditation is so blissful and enjoyable and fun. So what is this experience people are having? Whatever, and I want to have that same experience. And I don't want to discount that, because of course sometimes meditation is blissful. Sometimes it is just it's such a relief to leave the ordinary worries and stresses of the day and sit down on the cushion and take a deep breath and relax. And that's great. And there's nothing wrong with that being great. I mean, that's wonderful, but it's just
Yeah.
meditation isn't always like that. And you can't you can't necessarily count on meditation either being like that or staying like that, right? So you sit down and you're blissful for a couple minutes, and then the mind goes off and does its thing, and then within 5 minutes you're not blissful anymore because you're thinking about something that happened that day.
Or
And
more
then
likely, you're not blissful because you're trying not to do that.
or and then you get into that thing of where you're
Right.
trying not to think
Yeah.
about the thing that happened that day because you want to be blissful, damn it, and this thought is keeping you away from being blissful. And so what the hell is happening to me right now? I should be blissful. Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
And you begin to at least I began to realize that, or at least one step along this path is the realization that, maybe practice isn't so much being blissful. Maybe practice isn't so much a feeling, but an intention to bring yourself back when you realize that you've gone away, right? Is this continual intention to bring ourselves back, to see that we're not here and bring ourselves back. And this continual repetition of bringing back and bringing back, that becomes the practice, at least, in one, sort of one way of looking at it, where the practice is to realize that you've screwed up and here we are again, back at the same place.
Right. But I think that, sorry, there's a lawnmower in the background. You can hear that. I think that the challenge is getting rid of the thought that when the mind is not where you want it to be, that something is wrong, that I'm doing something wrong, that I'm screwed up or whatever it is, because that's just another thought, and we get caught up in it. It's like that comment John Kabat-Zinn often says, is like non-judgmental awareness. But that means we're not judging ourselves. Right. Self-judgment. And so, it's just that again. And then we can come back. And that's the first thing that we discover. I think that we discover just what the mind is really like. When we start to look at the mind by trying to bring the mind back, bring the awareness back, we realize, wow, this mind is nuts. and rather than fighting that, it's like, oh yeah, mind is nuts. So let me just see if I can open it up a bit more and create space around those the proliferation. What happens then? And then the proliferation becomes quite quiet. Or it's like the lawnmower in the background, just there's something in the background. But if I get really upset about that lawnmower in the background, then I'm, just going to be upset and anxious, as opposed to just, it's just sound, it's just thought, it's just whatever. And so the distractions actually are no longer a reminder to come back. The distractions can become the practice. It's like, oh, yeah, it's interesting how this mind gets distracted by that. What else is going on there? Or it's interesting how when I hear a lawnmower in the background, memories come up. Or it's interesting when I hear a lawnmower in the background, I get annoyed at the fact that people are using these stupid engines which just create noise and pollution. So it's like how quickly the mind goes to certain places.
Yeah.
And so rather than pushing these things away, it's like they're an opportunity for curiosity, for investigation as to what else is arising with them.
Right.
And then things, then we're getting somewhere. Then it's like, oh, right. You know, I can see the reactions, and that the reactions actually create more, you know, are just getting in the way of the actual experience. And so everything becomes an opportunity for practice.
Yeah.
So
not just sitting on the cushion, but, you know,
exactly,
ordinary life, which is the point.
Yeah. And yeah, so, you know, these various types of practice, they have their uses, and sometimes all I need to do is lie down and do body scans. Sometimes all I need to do is, you know, 20 minutes of loving kindness toward myself. You know, that's really important in that moment. And so having the toolbox is really helpful. But if we get confused about the toolbox, then it just creates more obstacles.
Yeah.
Which aren't helpful.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then, you know, there's experimentation. Using different mantras that can be, you know, if a teacher uses mantras, you know, we've never used a mantra, play with it, see what it's like. The loving kindness phrases are basically mantras. We don't label them in that way necessarily, but that's what they are. And so, yeah, meditation.
I should say that Xiao Mao has a comment here. I'll put it up on the screen. That Bhikkhu Analayo wrote wonderful practice-oriented books about Satipatthana and Anapanasati.
For sure.
Absolutely. Bhikkhu Analayo is one of the great scholars of this material and practitioners of this.
Yeah, so he's writing from his own experience. That's what's so beautiful about those books. Yeah. They can, you know, especially the Anapanasati book is not quite as, it's really practical. And I mean, you know, if you get any of those books, what I recommend is taking your time. Don't rush to read them cover to cover. They're not cover to cover books. You know, we can get very hung up on language, which is important, and yet also gets in the way. So we just have to kind of
use it as you like. I mean, his first Satipatthana book was his, as I recall, his PhD dissertation. And is a wonderful piece of scholarship, very, very deep and detailed look at the Satipatthana Sutta and its relation to the rest of the material in the suttas, and how it, you know, how to understand, at least from one very scholarly and skillful way of interpreting the sutta. I found it extremely useful, and as I began to understand Satipatthana, to read his book.
Oh, yeah. But you also came to it with a certain experience. I just wouldn't come to that book like fresh off, you know, right at the beginning of your practice.
Probably not.
He does have a practice-oriented book.
He does. He does also. I mean, I'm coming up from more of a scholarly.
Yeah, as a scholarly book, it's fantastic.
And that sort of interests me. And so he sort of, you know, touch the right things for me. But yeah, no, he's a wonderful writer and a wonderful practitioner. So yeah, anything he does is certainly worth studying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good. And then, you know, the other thing is just to keep practicing, and, you know, find a group to practice with, and
regular practice is just is so useful. And I think looking for immediate results can be another pitfall, you know, expecting something big, you know, either an experience to arise all of a sudden and bing, you know, I'm enlightened, or or expecting things to change overnight. Those can be some of the big pitfalls.
And you'll have great experiences. It's not to say, you know, I don't want to discount experiences.
Yeah.
Just don't get attached to them.
Yeah. And don't get misled by them, you know, and following them where, you know, they're just experiences.
Now, you know, there's also one of the great meditations I do every day is making my coffee and drinking my coffee.
It's a very meditative process. It is.
Yeah, it is.
Mhm.
And seriously. So if you'd like to support that process and support this show, you can buy us coffee anytime
Cup
at
of coffee.
diggingthedharma.com.
Yeah. You can become a member buying us coffee.
Yeah.
That would be
And
helpful.
we take full advantage of that.
By making ourselves coffee every day.
Yes, exactly. So, and while you're doing that, just send us your questions and your comments and your reflections. And
Yes.
we are
Digging
now
the Dharma.
back, and we will be here on a regular basis now till the end of the year, I hope.
I hope.
More or less.
Yeah. I mean, it
And,
depends what comes up, but hopefully we will be around.
Yeah, and we have some guests that we're looking at, and I think yeah, for sure. So, Doug, good to see you. Until next week.
Keep digging the Dharma.
You bet. All right. Bye, folks.
Bye-bye.